standards. You can also use the SANS CWE Top 25. You can also use the secure coding practices as well. And once again, the standard itself doesn't say look for business logic flaws too, because there's just no good way to identify that type of vulnerability. There isn't a CVV code or there's not a CVE database on business logic vulnerabilities. The other thing is hopefully if you have to do a web application vulnerability assessment, some of these things are being identified within your penetration test. This also goes back to, is your company that's doing your penetration test doing a good penetration test? Can they find these things that these normal automated tools can't find or static code analysis can't find? And so hopefully that's the part where I think they're trying to interwork the different types of assessments. However, in many cases, I've seen poor penetration testing, where someone just basically did a vulnerability scan and said, hey, it's a pen test. Once again, it's all about striking a balance between automation and a real person doing the work.
And let's be honest, sadly, a lot of organizations are going to go with the cheapest company. And the cheapest company, they're going to take Nessus, they're going to blast the external website, and they're going to say, there you go, there's your checkbox. You've now had an external penetration assessment performed. So what's sad is PCI 6.6 isn't doing its job, and now neither is the penetration testing requirement as well. So that could be a completely different topic that would last a long time, but let's just leave it at that for now. All right, objection 3, next problem. Based off my examples, web application firewalls and scanners, when it comes to the OWASP top 10, they're not going to identify all these vulnerabilities, right? I mean, based off my examples, I gave a couple of them. It's just the way it is.
So my point here is essentially, whether it's a manual or an automated assessment that's being performed, there's always going to be something that's going to be missed because that's just the nature of our business. We have a bunch of vulnerabilities. There's always zero-day attacks. There's things that aren't going to be found. Something new is going to pop up. So there's always going to be something new that's going to be found. Just like any other type of firewall, like a network-based firewall, there are going to be flaws within it where you can bypass it. Just like a web application firewall, you can bypass it just like Gary was showing you. The problem is that we have to use is a layered approach. Not one thing is actually going to be able to solve the issue. Even let's say the technology for web application firewalls improves significantly within the next year or 2 years or 3 years. There's still going to be issues that you can find that those applications just might not be able to look. Maybe they will look for business flaws. Maybe we'll be able to implement those technologies a little bit better with better whitelisting and blacklisting. And maybe they'll have better signatures where they can find stuff. But still, there's going to be other things that can be found.
And at this point, I'm just going to say this, is let's go ahead and bring this to the level of 0 day. So yeah, I concede that there's always going to be ways around these web application firewalls and around, just like there are network layer firewalls. But for Pete's sake, it shouldn't be removing a bracket. Let's get this down to the level where it needs to be. Let's start doing some whitelisting. How about PCI makes it so that whitelisting is the standard instead of this garbage blacklisting stuff? That's my take on it. Let's make it a little bit more difficult for the attackers. Finally, this one here, and this is the one that that really bugs me, is so the web application firewalls and web application scanners, there's little guidance. The PCI Council is giving very little guidance as to what is an acceptable web application firewall and what's an acceptable web application scanner. And this is what really gets me. So I have to do this ASV recertification thing every year because Secure State's an ASV, which means that we have to perform these external scans against different organizations' PCI zones. And I have to jump through so many hoops in order to get this stupid certification. All right, how come these web application scanners and web application firewalls don't have to go through some sort of certification as well? How come they don't have to stand up a web application in front of a vulnerable web application firewall and say, how many of these attacks are you going to block today? I mean, where is this? Where's the certification? If we're going to make PCI all about certification, then let's certify these things as well.
I kind of agree with this one. I don't really have any issues with it, but The thing that I started finding too is, especially when it comes to application scanners, or whether it be a web application assessment code review, additionally, whatever, the thing is that the guidance, such as what was provided in the previous slides, they just basically have a list of thou shall do this. They don't have any guidance or better understanding or better guidance on what you should do from a procedure standpoint. If you don't have those procedures, people are going to do the bare minimum, and they're just going to meet the highest level of the requirement. And it's kind of sad in that regard that people don't think of, oh, this is just a thou shall, and I really need to make up a better process internally to run these type of assessments or these tools or this vulnerability code review. And once again, payment applications that are on a Visa PCI list or Visa service provider list or what have you, they all have to go through a certification process. So is the ASV scan process, where all it is a vulnerability scan that you're doing on the external side. So if you're using these type of tools and they have to be validated, why on earth are these tools not validated in some way, shape, or form?
All right, and we're going to quickly wrap this up because I think we're almost out of time here. So let's just go through these real quickly here. So what's the answer? Real quickly, compliance does not equal security. So get that out of your head, and let's start thinking about how we're going to actually secure our organization.
Well, here's the other thing, too. It's not necessarily in our heads. It's really in the management's heads. And that's the fight that I was always fighting with within PCI. Every single time I go into an organization, you're not secure. You're not PCI compliant. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. They don't care because it doesn't affect their bottom line. And so I think, once again, as I've heard in several other presentations and different organizations and podcasts and what have you, it's all about communicating that up to upper management. If they don't understand that compliance does not equal security, or that compliance is not the bare minimum, at least, possibly, it needs to be communicated that they have to do risk assessments and understand what their true risks are and what they really should be doing above compliance to meet their security needs.
And then this, the second one here, we've already touched on that. The third one here, better secure software development lifecycle. Companies really should have a good SDLC in place where they're vetting out these vulnerabilities in the early processes. I mean, it should actually be part of the very development of the web application from the very design phase of the application all the way through. So we need a real SDLC. There's some good, there was Kevin Johnson's presentation, Ninja Developers and Application Security Testing, and your SDLC. That he presented in at OWASP, and then also this layered approach to security. So it shouldn't be web application firewall or manual assessment or vulnerability scan or something else. It should be all of these things. I mean, really, we should be layering this security. And I think that's it.
Well, I got a few other things on that other part of the software development lifecycle. So to give some examples of some things that could definitely improve that is, and these are some of the ideas that Kevin Johnson also gave out, perform those web application vulnerability scanners, so take those tools and run them in the pre-production portions of your software. Get the low-hanging fruit as fast as you can before you start pushing it out to production or a staging environment. The other thing is, too, is do those code reviews, do those other things in combination of. So that when your system is about, or your application, your code is going to get pushed out to production or to staging environment, then you actually have someone that knows a little bit more and can find the more high-level things or more complicated things that that software, those tools just can't find. And once again, that goes back to the layered approach. It's not just one thing, it's all of these things, because all these things combined, they're going to equal something that's a little bit better than what we're currently doing. When we go back to the layered approach and basically doing all these manual assessments, it's really a shame that we don't think about this. And once again, it goes back to the financial issues and management issues of management saying, hey, we don't want to do this because it's just going to cost us a bunch of money. And so once again, it's doing all of them, and maybe even assessing whether or not maybe all of them, you can't do all of them, but at least pick out the best ones that'll get the best bang for your buck.
Yep. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up now, and we thank you guys for your time, and we appreciate you guys being here, and let's go out and make some secure web applications, whatever that means.
See ya.
sorry we cut that so.
Oh, no, no, you guys just have 5 minutes. It's just fine. Well, the last one in this room. Yeah. I hope I'll be able to sit in on some of that, but all right, sounds good. You need audio for your presentation? You do? No, I mean like you don't have any audio in it. Okay. There's a search protector right down here. You got power. If you want, we can set you up with this.
Yes.
Right.
I prefer that because I don't like to walk around. I need to be behind the lectern all the time.
Yep. Just put this in your pocket. Flip it on. And then you should be good to go.
Where's the,
Yeah, it's very. I would turn it on. Turn that on right before you start. And then for this, just flip it right.
I think you can go ahead and do that. Do the test. Okay, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, awesome.
And I know you probably won't need this, but these, just so you know, these two operate the same channel. And if they're both on, they'll cause interference. And we can move
So
this.
is there like a distance thing that you found was optimal?
This one?
Yeah, like how far away?
Oh, it won't pick up this far away. If you bend it any closer, it will pick up. Here's the video portion of this and whatnot. So, there's the VGA.
Plugged in here.
Should detect it in a minute. F7? Yeah. Do extend or duplicate. Probably extend would be good for you. Do you want to duplicate display or? That right, F7, one more over. Right there. Okay, let go. Make sure it's plugged in all the way. It's not detecting the signal. introduction, do you want me to do just your name and name presentation? Or
That's fine.
name presentation, name and you?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
All right. All right. Let's go ahead and forget. Isn't it like a?
Just over there. There you go.
Okay.
Make sure.
Start in 2 minutes.
Thank you. People showed up. That's awesome. Looked at that sometimes.
The next talk is From Obstacle to Ally by Stephen Fox.
Hello, everybody. I'll try to keep this on time, if not early. I know that I'm up against Dunkin' Donuts, and hope to see you guys there. My name is Steve Fox. I work at the U.S. Department of the Treasury. I'm a security architect, and I keep your money safe. Pretty cool job. How many people do we have here that do security architecture? Awesome. Fantastic. What about sales? Any sales engineers? Marketers? Well, this presentation is about branding, but also from a security perspective. How many security people here think that we can actually position our own brands? We need to have our customers do that for us. Today, everyone here is going to be a detective. We're going to talk about a little story of a mystery of two companies that had a really horrible security brand. We're going to figure out why. HR-Corp, a company in the Midwest, was expanding into new areas, and they were trying to find new solutions to serve these new customers. Well, their efforts were always delayed and blocked by IT security. MEDCORP, a small healthcare company in the South, was expanding throughout the South and also the Western states. And they had to figure out how to serve their patients more effectively. Well, their security team was used to the old school methods of security, and they were intimidated by this new market, and they weren't sure how to deal with it. Our mystery is figuring out why we had a team of brands in 2011 that didn't talk to each other, weren't similar. A year later, everything was fine. What happened? This is where you guys are going to help me out. Help me solve the mystery of what changed for HR Corp and MEDCORP security teams that all of a sudden they were able to get along and work with their business stakeholders. So I was hired in 2011 by HR Corp to do a full network inventory. Now, why would they hire a network pen tester to do this? Any ideas? I'm just giving you one idea. Any others? Well, in this case, the project sponsor was from the business side. And he had done his own inventory, and he had asked security to do it as well. And the results were very, very different. He couldn't account for the amount of variability. So he hired a third party to do this. Because there was a 40% contradiction between what he found and what IT security was telling him was there. 40%, that doesn't make sense. You would expect to see maybe 5% normal variability, something you could account for. How could there be this much? Well, after my scans, hello everybody. I'll try to keep this on time, if not early. I know that I'm up against Dunkin' Donuts, and hope to see you guys there. My name is Steve Fox. I work at the U.S. Department of the Treasury. I'm a security architect, and I keep your money safe. Pretty cool job. How many people do we have here that do security architecture? Awesome, fantastic. What about sales? Any sales engineers? Marketers? Well, this presentation is about branding, but also from a security perspective. How many security people here think that we can actually position our own brands? We need to have our customers do that for us. Today, everyone here is going to be a detective. We're going to talk about a little story, a mystery of two companies that had a really horrible security brand. We're going to figure out why. HR Corp, a company in the Midwest, was expanding into new areas, and they were trying to find new solutions to serve these new customers. Well, their efforts were always delayed and blocked by IT security. MEDCORP, a small healthcare company in the South, was expanding throughout the South and also the Western states. And they had to figure out how to serve their patients more effectively. Well, their security team was used to the old school methods of security, and they were intimidated by this new market, and they weren't sure how to deal with it. Our mystery is figuring out why we had a team of brands in 2011 that didn't talk to each other, weren't similar. A year later, everything was fine. What happened? This is where you guys are going to help me out. Help me solve the mystery of what changed for HR Corp and MEDCORP security teams. So all of a sudden, they were able to get along and work with their business stakeholders. So I was hired in 2011 by HR Corp to do a full network inventory. Now, why would they hire a network pen tester to do this? Any ideas? I'm just giving you one idea. Any others? Well, in this case, the project sponsor was from the business side. And he had done his own inventory, and he had asked security to do it as well. And the results were very, very different. He couldn't account for the amount of variability. So he hired a third party to do this. Because there was a 40% contradiction between what he found and what IT security was telling him was there. 40%, that doesn't make sense. You would expect to see maybe 5% normal variability, something you could account for. How could there be this much? Well, after my scans and some conversations with the IT folks, I found out that there were almost 300 IP addresses that were undocumented. How is this possible? How could the business stakeholders totally miss 300 IP addresses? Any ideas? Come on, detectives, do your jobs here. What do you think, Matt? Virtual workstations, that's a great, you can bring them down in case someone checks them out. Any other ideas? Yeah, basically, I found this out by doing some scans, but also confirming information by being invited out to lunch by the security analyst that worked for the IT manager, because he didn't want to talk in front of him. And they were telling me about, hey, you might want to check out these segments over here. You might want to try these kinds of scans. The analysts themselves were uncomfortable with what was going on. Also, I was able to uncover some data by doing interviews outside of the IT security team. While I was doing this, I was wondering, well, what's really fundamental here? What do these people care about? So in my interviews with the business, these were the core areas that GrrCON as a business cared about. Their primary goal was looking after the job candidates that they would place. And everything that they did revolved around them. When I looked at the security team's brand, they cared about corporate assets. They could care less about the job candidates. If it was job candidate data, well, that's not really important. We don't secure that. That's the business doing that. The brand differences resulted in a lot of dysfunctional behaviors. So for example, the security team was charged by their security manager to block any decisions that he didn't like. So if a project manager on the business side wanted to launch a project, if the security manager didn't agree with that project, behind the scenes they would associate segments of the shadow IT with their projects. So during the kickoff meeting, that person would fail their audit. And it would kill the project or it would delay it. So if the business really wanted to do a project, it would be delayed, it would be more expensive, and it would actually influence the way that the business would operate. Team members were very condescending with their staff members. Why? What do you think a security person would be condescending with a business person? No statements, really? Lack of respect? You were laughing, what do you think? Arrogance. Good one. Basically, the security team observed the security manager being condescending with executives, treating them like all they were good at was doing business, as though business was a bad thing and wasn't up to the time and skills of the security staff. The business needs were not understood by the security team. All they cared about was security of data. The business people, well, that's what business is what they do. We don't care about that. Well, as a result of that, any business initiatives that had a security component, they would make the people feel like idiots for even going for their help. The staff members felt alienated by the security team. And the response was, well, you know, what we do is more important than what you do. A further implication of that was that any value propositions that were proposed to this security team by the business were rejected. It was too good for them. and the business people were responsible. After all, in this last statement, it was told to me during lunch by one of the analysts. That is all the business people are good at, is making business decisions. We're better than that. So what was this turnaround? After I left, I turned over the inventory, turned over the evidence of the shadow IT that was happening in the organization. Within 2 months, the security manager was fired. I would imagine for fraud, for trying to hide that many IP addresses, and for really costing the company a lot of money. After that, the new security manager forced every security project to be rescoped with business objectives rather than security objectives. And every single team member of the security team had to give monthly lunch and learns to their business counterparts, but also study what the business needed because these lunch and learns had to have a business focus. And also they had to give quarterly training sessions to their business groups. So now we move on to MEDCORP. They hired me to do a mapping of personal healthcare information, also known as PHI. Their drivers were the high-tech provisions within HIPAA, but also they were expanding into new markets, and they wanted to find a new way to serve the patients, probably even using electronic medical records devices. And to do that, you really need to know, where's my PHI going? But didn't they do a PHI flow before? I asked a project sponsor, why you're hiring me? Well, you know, the results were kind of weird. They were getting some weird data from security. Well, the data flow inconsistencies were because security had done a study 3 years previous that was outdated. And they had gone to a third-party company to do this, and they figured, well, nothing's really changed, nothing will ever change, so this data is good. It's 3-year-old data, it's still good. But every other business unit had done their own study, and they were quabbling about the definition of PHI. What is PHI? What data are we dealing with? Well, the differential between what the business units figured out and what security figured out was 55%. So, learning the lessons from HR Corp, I was like, I better do a ground analysis, figure out what's going on here. So, MEDCORP was really focused on patient care. Now, their particular vertical is senior citizens. That was their market. This is where they live and breathe. All the security team cared about was corporate assets. Now, sure, they were also worried about patient data, but it was on a lower level. Now, they were doing their jobs. They weren't like HR Corp. They weren't doing all those shenanigans. But their data was not their culture. I'm sorry, the data was their culture. It wasn't about patient care. Because after all, they weren't medical people, they're IT. And because of this separation in the way they thought about what they did, they couldn't really support business innovation. When the ideas for the electronic medical record system came to them, they were afraid about the increased risk. They were afraid about the increased complexities with implementing the system. So they fought it. Also, this team only had a history of speaking up when things were bad. So no one wanted to hear from them because, well, you know, they don't want to have a bad day. You never have good news for me. Why should we talk to you? But whenever good news came, there was always a negative caveat. How many of you want to talk to someone to say, I like you, but you know what? I really hate what you do? Now, every organization is political. And the team members with the security team knew how to relate to their peers. a very small group, so politically they were really good at influencing themselves. Not too influential. They could not influence decisions of the medical staff, which formed the vast majority of the rest of the organization. Because they couldn't understand what they did, because they never spent time in a hospital setting, and any security projects that involved being in a hospital were handled by a third party. So the turnaround here was to take all those staff on phased field trips to facilities where the MEDCORP did their work, to introduce them to the people behind the actual data, to show them this is why you do your job. This is why you get paid. If you have a breach, these are the people that get hurt. People's lives are at stake here. Also, management, MEDCORP management, made the security staff rewrite all their security use cases. Their entire security program rewritten to focus first on patient care and what every risk might have implications for from that perspective. This led slowly, over about a 6-month period, to improve rapport and trust between the security staff and the business stakeholders. Sorry, 9 months. So 9 months later, I returned to do a pen test on their brand new EMR that was just about to go to production. Well, I was able to compromise their SQL Server and 3 of the critical systems, and I was able to grab a lot of patient data off their servers. When I turned over my report, the first thing that they asked me was, how does this affect our patients? How many of you that are pen testers are asked, how does this affect our stakeholders? How does this affect our customers? They care about how does this affect our data. These people were able to make the cultural shift, the brand shift, to focusing on their actual customers. Now after that, they definitely wanted to know about data, they wanted to know about the vulnerabilities, they wanted to know what they could do to fix it. But this was the first response, and that was amazing to me. They were able to transform themselves from a focus on data and security as the objective to serving the customer. They saw security as a tool, not the mission. How many of us can do that? It's hard. Even for me as an architect, every meeting I have with my customers, I'm talked about tax information, data. They don't talk about, well, what's going to happen to this person's ability to file their tax return? What's going to happen to this person's ability to get health care? This transition led them to go from being just security people to trusted advisors within the organization. What this looks like is being able to be cooperative with management. Certainly, if you have to say no, having a damn good reason for saying no. And being able to back it up with business reasons, not just vulnerability reports and Nmap scans. Because really, they're not going to get that. They're not going to care. They'll find some reason to say no to you and do what they want anyways. Cultivate respect. If you don't respect them, why should they respect you? Reflect your role in accomplishing core business needs because you have a role to play here. Security is an important part of business, but you need to brand it as such. Otherwise, people won't see it. To do that, you need to focus on 3 basic things. This is important. You need to write this down. Focus on how to avoid cost in your programs, improve productivity with what you do or service delivery, and lastly, find a way to increase revenues. So if you take nothing else from this talk, if you think branding is bullshit, this is not bullshit. You need to focus on this. As we discussed earlier, the projects were rescoped to focus on business. Security was no longer the objective, it was baked into the projects, much less just like the seatbelts in the car. No one argues about the different features of a seatbelt. It's a seatbelt, it's there. No one sells you a leather-lined seatbelt or a special seatbelt with special green fabrics. It's a seatbelt. It's baked into the car. Think about your security programs in that way. Also, collaboration with the business to come up with innovation. What does that look like for your business, possibly? There are many ways to do a control. And if you come up with a new way to do a control cheaper or to offer more options to your customers, that's innovation. Being able to market your solutions, being able to bring your customers good news about what you're doing in security is critical, just as it was for HR Corp, just as it was for MEDCORP. Being able to go from the Department of No, N-O, to the Department of No, K-N-O-W, is key. And also being able to influence your customers by understanding your customers, figuring out what they care about, and showing them what you can do to achieve their drivers. Now, I'm sure some of you are focused on the technical aspects of this and wanted to know more information, but really the core message is they were able to rebrand what they were as a team so they could do the technical stuff, so they could gain the support of the business in order to do the more technical solutions. Why does this matter for you? Poor security branding leads to a denial of influence condition. So whenever you think about yourself as a security professional, do you want to have a DOI occurring in your environment? No. You want to have influence. So think about these. These were 3 brands I found online. Read these messages. Nowhere in the Ford branding statement is a car mentioned. It's Ford. They sell cars, right? No, they're focused here on contributing to a better world. You want to be part of that story, don't you? You want to be part of a better world. So you're encouraged to explore that. You're encouraged, well, how does Ford do that? Dell, do you want to find a way to make technology achieve needs and desires? No, they sell computers. Now, TrustWave. We have TrustWave just next door. Really powerful brand. Now, this was a little bit different. They get a bit more solid and concrete in their mission. But if you notice, they're not talking about really what they do as a company. They don't talk about their managed services so much. They don't talk about their pen testing. They're talking about how they serve their customers. So we're starting to wrap up here. There's a 5-step process that you can follow to take your existing brand and convert it to something that can help your customer. Step 1, brand triage. Why is your brand the way it is now? What's working for you? Figure out, well, what part of my brand is actually helping the business? You want to keep that. You don't want to throw out what's actually working for you. What's getting in the way, you throw that out. You figure out a way to rework that. Once that's done, you come up with a basic brand statement that captures what you do to meet your customers' needs. Step 2, experience stories. Now, detectives, why are stories powerful? Why can't you just say, I'm going to do this for you? It's like, hey, I'll help you make more money. Why is a story so powerful? Any ideas? Matt, do you have any idea on why stories are powerful? You tell a pretty good story there, Matt. Why are stories powerful? Why are stories powerful? Exactly. You put someone into a situation. You help them imagine what it's like to be in that struggle. Now, the basic components of a story is a beginning, a struggle that the hero walks through, and a resolution. So your hero is never you. Security is never a hero. The customer is a hero. And the conflict needs to be something that they're going through every day. It needs to be something associated with the business. At the end of this process, you have a collection of story templates to share with your team. Step 3, inculcate those stories. Now, why are these stories templates? Because each team member needs to internalize them and figure out what role do I play in the story. So that when they go out, when they interface with your customers, they can tell their version of the story that still retains that core brand message. The outcome of this is a set of organic stories that can be used to fit a particular purpose. So if you go to a meeting to discuss a brand new product, and if that product reminds you of something you did 6 months ago, you can call upon that story and share that with your customer. And that process makes them feel more confident in working with you as a team. Step 4, the story creates a promise. If you don't deliver on it, you've hurt your story. You've harmed your brand. So you actually have to deliver on that promise in a manner which honors and builds upon your brand image. At the end of this step, you have new stories that relate the team brand combined with the corporate brand. The last step is follow through. You make certain choices in your security program, maybe even hard choices, that align with that story. And it's very possible that those choices may change the stories you tell, which make those choices even more difficult. But the best barometer you can use to make the right choices is to ask your customer, hey, will this choice hurt you or help you? You need to really count on your customers to help you make those decisions. So before I leave you today, before I wrap up, you need to focus on your brand when delivering value. And if your brand doesn't deliver value, you need to revise it. Make your clients the heroes of your story, and remember, security is a tool, not an objective. I'd like to open the floor for questions. Any questions? Well, why do you pass audits? What is the purpose of that? Why? Because it helps your business. If you don't pass an audit, your business fails. So the purpose is to keep the business operating. That is your actual mission. The audit is a tool to do that. The regulators made the regulations to protect the industry. Those regulations are written in a very broad sense, focused on the entire field. PCI, it's focused so that stores feel good about using card machines. It's not built to protect the single business. SEC rules are there to help a investor feel safer about having the decision they need to make investment decisions. It's to help the economy. That's the mission. Right. Depending on what you're dealing with, that's true. Yes. Any other observations? Yes. It depends on the size of your organization. Obviously, if you're the size of Ford, changing their entire information security brand, we're looking at 9 months to a year to do that. To actually take it from vision, where you're actually doing things, 9 months to a year for a company that large. But for a small company, let's say like a small financial company that does brokerage accounts, we're looking at 3 to 5 months to do that. To take it from vision to figuring out, well, what is the actual operational process of taking our vision to completion. Well, thank you for coming. We're definitely wrapping up on time, so thank you so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me on Twitter or by email, or you can just ask me when you see me during the bar break. Thank you so much.